Hey guys, Plonkerboy900 here and welcome back to a brand new challenge video. I've really been enjoying the ROM hacks recently, so I've got another one for you here today. Not only that, we've got a really interesting challenge too. Today we'll be finding out, can you beat Pokemon Theta Emerald without evolving any Pokemon? For those of you who don't know, Theta Emerald is a ROM hack of Pokemon Emerald version, which has added a lot of new content. We've got every single Pokemon from Gen 1 through 6, plus Alolan forms from Gen 7. It's got the physical special split, new moves and abilities, and it's also a lot more difficult than regular Emerald. We'll be seeing things like Mega Evolutions as well. The rules for this challenge are pretty simple. I'm not allowed to evolve any Pokemon. Not only that, but I'm not allowed to use any fully evolved Pokemon either, or Pokemon that don't evolve. Basically, this means I wouldn't be able to use something like a Charizard or something that doesn't evolve, like a Tauros. I am allowed to catch middle stage evolutions, but I just can't evolve them. For example, I could catch a Charmander and use that the whole game, but I wouldn't be able to evolve it into a Charmeleon. However, if I did find a Charmeleon, I could catch and use that. But as I said before, if I found a wild Charizard, I would not be allowed to catch it. No items in battle obviously, this is a challenge run of course, and held items are allowed. Also, I'll be using Pokemon for HMs outside of battle when necessary, but I won't use those Pokemon in battle. Before we get going, I just want to say that actually only 16% of you who watch these videos are subscribed to the channel. If you enjoy my content, then please consider hitting the subscribe button. It would mean the world to me. Alright, with all that out of the way, let's do this. I start the game and pick the female character and call her Hanako. As always, comment down below if you get the reference. I picked Trico as my starter as Mudkip is for losers, but even so I won't be using it in this challenge. I beat Brendan with ease, and we finally get our Pokédex and Pokeballs. I start off by catching a Bellsprout as I want something for the first gym, and in Petalburg Woods I catch a couple of Pokemon as well. First of which is a Pikachu, and second is a Phantump. I don't know how long I'll keep these on the team, but I'm pretty happy with these additions. As always, the first gym leader is Roxanne, and as you can see she has 6 Pokemon. She starts off with Onix while I lead with Phantump, and goes straight for the Hornleech as she goes for a Curse. Even with the boosted defense it does a lot of damage, and not even a potion is going to save her from one more of those. Next up is Anorith, so I swap into Bellsprout. Her Water Gun literally does 2 damage, but we do end up missing a Razor Leaf. We do hit the next one though and it does well over half, and 2 Razor Leafs are enough to KO. Next up is Lily, so I just stay in and go for the Acid Spray which lowers special defense, and it does a decent chunk and we even survive an Acid. This means we can hit one more Acid Spray to bring it down to red health, as we finally get taken out by one more Acid. I swap into Pikachu just to finish it off with an Electro Ball, and next up is a Tortuga. I stay in and go for another Electro Ball, which brings it all the way down to its Sturdy. She does get a critical hit bite, but even so it hardly does anything, and we can take it out with one more Electro Ball. Next up is Archen or Archin, I'm not sure how it's supposed to be pronounced. So I stay in and go for one more Electro Ball, which almost takes it out from full health as well. Because of its ability Defeatist, Rock Throw really doesn't do much damage at all, and once again, even with her using a potion, she's not surviving one more hit. We're now down to her final Pokemon Nosepass, so I go straight for the Thunder Wave as she misses the Rock Throw. I can now hit an Electro Ball which does great damage, but unfortunately she doesn't miss, and we go down in one hit. That's fine though, as I just swap into Phantump and finish it off with a Hornleech, winning us badge number 1 in a pretty easy fight. On our way to Doofa Town I catch a Natu as I think it'll be really useful for the second gym, and once we arrive there I change the trendy saying to something much more appropriate. I also head to Granite Cave and catch myself a couple more team members, the first of which being an Onix, and the second of which being an Axew. With our new team members I take on the second gym leader Brawly. Thanks to Natu, this fight wasn't actually that bad. I set up a Calm Mind and then go for a Stored Power, which is an easy one-shot. Next up is Natu, who deals some decent damage to us but we're able to take it out with one Air Cutter, and next up is Pancham, who barely survives a Stored Power. He just goes for Karate Chop though, so we take it easily, and we go for an Air Cutter for a one-shot even with him fully healing. Next up is Scraggy, who does survive an Air Cutter, and with one Feint Attack, Natu's reign of terror is finally over. I switch in Bellsprout and finish it off with a Magical Leaf, and next up is Timber. I go for another Magical Leaf, which does well over half as his Wake Up Slap hardly does any damage. This means we can outspeed and take it out with one more, and we're down to his final Pokemon, Hariyama. I go for the Acid Spray to get the special defense drop, as he hits back with a knockoff which we barely survive. There must have been a speed tie as we get outsped the next turn, and taken out with one more knockoff. I swap in Pikachu this time and go for the Electro Ball, but even with the special defense drop it hardly does anything, and we get taken out in one hit. I swap into Axew and go for the Dragon Rage, which always does 40 damage, so I'm just praying that he's got less than that left. We survive a Force Palm just about, but unfortunately Dragon Rage is not quite enough. He does heal up with a super potion, which means we can hit one more time, but we go down the next turn and it's down to my final Pokemon, Onix. Thankfully we outspeed, and I go for a dig, which thank goodness is just enough to finish it off, and we just win the second badge. That fight was really easy up until the final Pokemon. There's another fight with Brendan here, but I'll just skip over this as it really wasn't that much of a problem. And instead, let's move on to the third gym leader, Watson. He starts off with a Minun, so I lead with Onix, and he goes straight for the Fake Tears, which doesn't really worry me, as I hit a Bulldoze, which is super effective. It also lowers his speed, so we can outspeed and take it out with one more. And next up is Plusle. He does go for the Charm to lower attack, which isn't great, but Bulldoze still does decent damage. His Swifts really don't do too much damage either, so 2 more Bulldozes are enough to take it out. And next up is Rotom, so I decide to swap into Phantump. He goes for the super effective Ominous Wind, which we just survive, and I hit back with the super effective Shadow Claw, which does well over half. He does take us out the next turn though, so I swap into Axew and go for the Assurance. He does outspeed again and go for another Ominous Wind, but we survive and take it out from there. Glaffy's up next, so I swap back into Onix and go for the Bulldoze, which does over half. He just wastes a turn going for charge, which doesn't really affect me at all, so I can just take it out with one more. And next up is Magneton. I was really scared of his Mirror Shot, but thankfully he missed, and because he's 4 times weak to ground, Bulldoze does great damage. He does go for a Super Potion, but that's not really a problem, as 2 more Bulldozes are all we need to get the KO. We're already down to his final Pokemon, Manectric. His Bite hardly does anything and I hit a Bulldoze for good damage, and next turn I decide to go for Dig, as its base power is slightly higher than Bulldoze. Dig hits and it's enough to finish it off from there, so that's 3 badges down already. On my way to the next town I catch a Munchlax, which I'm really happy about. I think it could be pretty useful. The next fight worth mentioning is Maxie, and let me tell you, this is where things got tough. The levels really shot up at this point of the game. We got absolutely destroyed by his Houndoom, so I knew I was going to need to do some training, and I also decided to catch a new member, Squirtle. A water type will be really useful against Maxie and the next gym, so I'm really happy to have this on the team. Also, while training, I found a shiny Klefki. It's a shame that Klefki doesn't evolve, as then I would be able to use it in the challenge. I catch it anyway, no shiny left behind, but of course, I won't be using it in battle. With our newly trained up team, I try Maxie once again, and this time things go much better. First up is Golbat, so I lead with Pikachu and go for the Thunder Wave, and then hit a super effective Discharge, which does huge damage thanks to a crit. He does hit a crit of his own though with Acrobatics, but thankfully we survive, and even with him using a Super Potion, 2 more Discharges finish it off. Next up is that Houndoom again, so I swap into Onix, but we still get outsped and he hits a Snarl for big damage. Thankfully though we survive and go for a Bulldoze to lower his speed, and it actually does over half as well. I thought we'd outspeed the next turn, but we don't, but he actually ends up missing. This means I can land a dig for the knockout. That was lucky. Next up is Pupitar, so I swap into Phantump as he goes for an Iron Defense, but even with his defenses boosted, Hornleech does huge damage to it. He does outspeed the next turn though and hit a Crunch, and he gets a critical hit as well, which we can't survive. I switch in Squirtle, who just gets hit by a Scary Face, but that's fine, we can just finish it off with a Water Pulse from there. Next up is Lampent, so I stay in and go for a Muddy Water, and we end up getting a lucky critical hit as well for the one-shot. We're now down to his final Pokemon, Camerupt, so I just swap into Onix to lower his speed with Bulldoze, and do some decent damage at the same time. He does take us out with an Earth Power though, so I swap back into Squirtle and go for the Muddy Water, which is 4 times super effective. Obviously it's enough to finish it off, and we've finally beaten Maxie. Next up is the 4th gym leader, Flannery, but this fight was just not happening. Her levels are really high and she has a Sun team, which doesn't help, and her Delphox in particular just sweeps my entire team. I was definitely going to need some more training if I wanted to win this fight, so that's what I went and did. As you can see here, my levels are now pretty much on par with hers, and I've also added Munchlax to the team. I try again, and this time things go much better. She starts off with the Drought Ninetales as I lead with Munchlax, and I decide to start building a rollout chain. 2 bring it down to low health, and then she heals with a Hyper Potion, and I was hoping that the 3rd hit of rollout would be enough, but it isn't quite. But that's actually fine as we survive a Flamethrower with 4 health remaining, and just finish it off from there. Next up is Houndoom, so I stay in the hopes of hitting the final hit of rollout, but that wasn't to be as we go down in 1 hit, so I swap into Onix as the sunlight fades. He goes for the Flamethrower, which does good damage to us, and I hit back with a Bulldoze to bring it down below half and lower its speed. We're now faster as well, so 1 was enough to finish it off, and next up is that terrifying Delphox. I swap into Pikachu and go for Nuzzle, which if you didn't know is actually just Thunder Wave, but it also does damage. Now that it's paralysed, it's going to be a lot easier to deal with, and much to my surprise we survive a Flamethrower. Next turn I go for a Thunderbolt, but it really doesn't do that much, and we get taken out by 1 more, so I swap back into Onix and go for Dig. I was hoping it would be enough, but she survives on a sliver of health. Not only that, she doesn't get fully paralysed, and we go down to 1 flamethrower. I swap into Squirtle, who's faster, and we can just finish it off with a water pulse from there. And next up is Macargo, who's 4 times weak to water. 1 Muddy Water sees to that no problem, and next up is another 4 times weak to water Pokemon, Camerupt. It also goes down in 1 Muddy Water. We're now down to our final Pokemon Torkoal, which also has Drought. Squirtle was able to bring it all the way down to red health with a couple of Muddy Waters, and we survive a couple of Flamethrowers too. I was hoping I could just end the battle then and there, but unfortunately she heals with a Hyper Potion, and we're not able to take it out before we go down ourselves. I swap into Axew and go for the Rock Tomb, which I was hoping would be enough, but he survives on a sliver of health, and goes for the Iron Defense. That's not really a problem though, as 1 Dragon Claw is easily enough to finish it off from that range, and with that we've beaten Flannery and got 4 badges already. On my way back to Petalburg City, I catch a Sandile in the desert, and now we can take on the 5th gym leader, Norman. This was actually yet another really difficult fight. He has so many fast and hard hitting Pokemon that I knew I was going to need to do some more training and maybe even make some more changes to the team. In the end, I decided to catch him a Chop, as I think a fighting type will be really useful. I train it up a few levels and try again. He starts off with Bouffalance, so I lead off with Phantom and go straight for the Will-O-Wisp, as he misses the Mega Horn. That was basically the best start I could possibly wish for. I'm gonna need Phantom later, so I swap into Axew, who takes a Zen Headbutt really easily. As Bouffalance can't really do that much to me, I decide to use a Dragon Dance, and next turn I just finish it off with the Dragon Claw. Next up is Exploud, so I stay in and go for another Dragon Claw, but even at +1 it's not enough for a one-shot. We do get taken out by an extra sensory, so I swap back into Phantom again and take another extra sensory no problem, and then just finish it off with a Horn Leech and get some of our health back as well. Next up is Staraptor, which is definitely one of his best Pokemon. I swap into Pikachu and go for Nuzzle right off the bat, as he goes for Agility. We're still faster though, and I go for a Thunderbolt this turn, which thanks to Staraptor's bad defenses is enough to take it out. Next up is Sawsbuck, so I stay in and go for another Nuzzle, and then I decide to swap into Machop. He does go for Charm to lower our attack, which isn't ideal, but even so, 2 Cross Chops take it out no problem. Next up is Blissey, which is actually kinda terrifying. We get outsped and hit by an Ice Beam, which we survive with just 4 health remaining, and then I hit a Horn Leech, which almost takes out from full health, but look at that, we get all of our health back. Seems like a pretty good trade-off to me. He does actually go for a Hyper Potion, but because of Blissey's huge HP stat, it's not even enough to fully heal it, and we can finish it off with 1 more Horn Leech. That couldn't have gone much better. We're now just down to his final Pokemon, Slacking. He does outspeed us and go for a Play Rough, but we're able to survive, and go for a Will-O-Wisp, which is absolutely essential if we want to win this fight. His ability means he can only move every other turn, so a mixture of that, the burn damage, and the health we get back from Horn Leech mean that we can take it out with no problems whatsoever. Slacking goes down and we earn ourselves the 5th badge. On our way to Fortress City, I catch myself a Scyther. I didn't realise it at the time, but let me tell you, this thing ended up being the absolute MVP of the team. You'll see soon enough. We take back the Weather Institute from Team Aqua, and have another fight with Brendan. First up is Swellow, so I lead with Pikachu, and we easily survive an Air Slash and paralyse it with a Nuzzle, and then just outspeed and KO with a Thunderbolt. Next up is the Alolan Raichu, so I swap into Phantom. We take a Thunderbolt no problem, and go for the super effective Shadow Claw. He just survives on a sliver of health though, but that's not really a problem as you take another Thunderbolt with ease, and finish it off with 1 more Shadow Claw. Next up is Wailord, so I just swap back into Pikachu and go for a Thunderbolt, which does well over half. Because of this, his Water Spout really doesn't do as much as it could have done, and we end up surviving and taking it out with 1 more Thunderbolt. Next up is Breloom, so I swap into our new Scyther, and just outspeed and go straight for the Aerial Ace, which is an easy one-shot. His final Pokemon is Blaziken, so I stay in. Despite being 12 levels lower, we outspeed, and Aerial Ace does huge damage. It's worth noting that I have the ability Technician, so weaker moves are powered up. There's no way we're surviving a Flamethrower though, so I decide to swap in Onix. I wasn't worried about going down to a Flamethrower, as we have the Sturdy ability but we survive it anyway, and I can just finish it off with a Bulldoze from there. Blaziken goes down and Brendan is defeated once again. Now we arrive in Fortress City, where we can take on the 6th gym leader, Winona. She starts off with a Skarmory as I lead with Onix, and Rock Slide's really doing no damage at all, so I decide to swap into Pikachu, and we bring it down to KO range with 1 Thunderbolt. She just keeps going for Metal Sound though for some reason, so we can take it out without even taking damage, and next up is Honchkrow. I swap back into Onix, and as you can see I'd set up Stealth Rock earlier, which is really going to help in this fight. She goes to Draw Peck for a small amount of damage, and our Rocky Helmet takes effect. I retaliate with a Rock Slide which almost takes it out, and even with her healing with a Hyper Potion, 2 more hits are all we need. Sigilyph is up next, so I swap into Munchlax. And we've got really good special defense, so we take a Psychic with ease. I go for Body Slam, but we don't get the paralysis, but that's fine. We survive one more Psychic and then just take it out with one more Body Slam. Gyarados is up next, so I swap into Pikachu, and I don't mess around with Nuzzle or anything, I just go straight for the 4-time super effective Thunderbolt, which is an easy one-shot. Next up is Talonflame, who takes 50% of its health straight away from Stealth Rock. I swap back into Onix as she just goes for Tailwind, and from that range, Rock Slide is an easy KO. We're now down to our final Pokemon, Altaria. It's level 50, which is kinda terrifying. I swap in Pikachu and go for the Nuzzle, but we get outsped and hit by a Moonblast, but we're able to survive and get the paralysis. I'm able to deal some really good damage to it before we go down, so I can just swap back into Onix and go for another Rock Slide, which takes it out from that range. That was probably the easiest gym fight so far. We have to go through the whole Team Magma subplot here, but the fight with Maxie was actually kinda tough. He starts off with the Chandelure as I lead with Onix, and we get taken down to our Sturdy with 1 Hex. I do hit back with the Bulldoze though, which does decent damage, and of course it lowers its speed, so I can just take it out with a Stone Edge from there. Next up is Houndoom, so I swap into Munchlax, and he decides to start setting up Nasty Plot. I hit the Body Slam and thankfully we do get the paralysis, this thing could have swept without that. And next turn he just goes for a Super Potion, which means we can take it out with 2 more hits. Next up is Claydol, so I swap into Scyther, and go straight for the super effective Bug Bite. Once again it's boosted by Technician, so it brings it all the way down to a sliver. He does set up a Trick Room though, but it doesn't seem to work as we outspeed and take it out the next turn anyway. And next up is Tyranitar. I swap into Phantom and go for the Will-O-Wisp, which is absolutely necessary, and as you can see his Stone Edge is still doing over half. I decide to go for Horn Leech so I can get some health back, and it does do decent damage, but we can't survive a Dark Pulse. I swap in Scyther as he misses a Stone Edge, which I was so thankful for. I hit another Bug Bite for an easy KO, and next up is Crobat. I do the usual with Pikachu, hitting a Nuzzle to get the paralysis, and then hit a Thunderbolt the next turn, which does great damage as well. He does hit with a Venoshock the next turn and then heal with a Super Potion, but as always Super Potions really aren't helping him at all, and one more Thunderbolt knocks it out thanks to a critical hit. Next up is Camerupt, so I swap into a Tentacle, which I caught just before this fight, but somehow Camerupt survives, quite convincingly as well. He hits back with a super effective Earthquake, which we cannot survive, so I just swap back into Pikachu and go for Surf. It's enough to take it out, and that was his final Pokemon, so we beat Maxie for the final time. On our way to Moss Deep City there's another fight with Brendan, but this fight was basically the same as the last time, with the exception of his Blaziken Mega Evolving. It was an anticlimax though, we still outspeed and 1-hit KO with an Aerial Ace. Not even a Mega Evolution can stop the power of Scyther. With that we take on the 7th gym leaders Tate and Liza. I decided to train up Sandile for this fight as its dark typing could come in useful. Solrock outspeeds everyone and goes for a Heat Wave, but thankfully it misses Phantump. But Lunatone goes for Earth Power, which takes out Sandile. It wasn't very useful after all. I go for a Shadow Claw with Phantump on Solrock, and it does about half as I send in Scyther. Scyther finishes off the Solrock with a Bug Bite, and Lunatone hits Phantump with an Ice Beam. We do just hang on though and go for a Horn Leech, which does a lot of damage, and heals back most of our health as well. Bronzong comes out next, and I just finish off the Lunatone with a Bug Bite from Scyther, and then hit Bronzong with a Shadow Claw from Phantump. He does hit a Heavy Slam though, which Phantump can't survive, so I send in Pikachu as they send out Slowking. I go for a Thief with Scyther, and because of the updated type matchup it's super effective on Bronzong. It does just survive though as Pikachu goes for a Thunderbolt on Slowking, which doesn't even do half, but we do get the paralysis. Bronzong hits another Heavy Slam on Pikachu this time, but we survive. They do heal up Bronzong with a Hyper Potion the next turn, which isn't ideal, but Scyther can finish off the Slowking, and Pikachu hits a weak Thunderbolt on Bronzong. Gardevoir is up next, but Scyther hits a Bug Bite for decent damage, and we even steal his Citrus Berry. I was kinda worried of this Gardevoir, so I decided to paralyze it with Pikachu, but he retaliates with a Moonblast, which takes us out. I send in Munchlax, who has great special defense, and Scyther finishes off Gardevoir with one more Bug Bite. Bronzong hits a Heavy Slam on Scyther, which does a lot of damage, as Munchlax goes for a Grow Punch, which is basically just Power Up Punch. Now Galley comes out, but this isn't really a problem. Scyther's faster and Aerial Ace is super effective, so it's enough for a one-shot. Now it's just 2-on-1. He does hit a Heavy Slam to finish off Scyther though, as Munchlax hits another Grow Punch. I send in Onix and just go for a weak Stone Edge, but it doesn't really do that much, as they just waste a turn going for Gravity as Munchlax hits a third Grow Punch. Eventually Bronzong attacks though, and Onix has the Rocky Helmet, so he does some good damage to himself, and Munchlax's Body Slam is enough to seal the deal, winning us our 7th badge, just one more left to go. We have to team up with Steven against Maxie, but this fight really wasn't a problem. So now let's move on to the fight with Archie. He starts off with a Crobat, so I lead with Pikachu, and right off the bat, he misses a Hypnosis. I'm able to paralyze it with a Nuzzle, which is really useful, and then outspeed the next turn and hit a Thunderbolt for really good damage thanks to a crit. He does survive though and hit a Brave Bird, and his recoil damage almost takes him out. He does heal with a Super Potion, but that's not really a problem at all, as one more Thunderbolt finishes it off. Next up is Tentacruel, so I decide to swap into Munchlax, and we take a Hydro Pump like an absolute beast. I retaliate with an Earthquake, which is super effective, and it does well over half. We survive a Sludge Wave the next turn no problem and just go for one more Earthquake for the KO, and next up is Walrein. I swap back into Pikachu and once again just paralyze it with Nuzzle, and we even get to hit one Thunderbolt before we go down to a Blizzard. I swap into Phantump, who's now faster, and one Wood Hammer is all we need to get the KO. Next up is a Dragonite, which could be a real threat. I swap into Onix just to set up a Stealth Rock, which I probably should have done earlier, as we take an Outrage. We do go down to one more Outrage the next turn, but we did do some good damage with Rocky Helmet. I take a risk and swap into Scyther on the hopes he'll hit himself in Confusion from Outrage, which he unfortunately doesn't, but we do survive the incoming Wing Attack. Now I can just take it out with a super powered Aerial Ace, and next up is Electros. Obviously we outspeed and go for a Bug Bite, which is also enough to KO. Now it's just down to his final Pokemon, which is not only a Sharpedo, but a Mega Sharpedo. Once again though, it's a bit of an anticlimax. We just outspeed and KO with a Bug Bite, winning us the fight with Archie for the final time. We meet with Steven in Sutopolis and then go to the Sky Pillar, where I actually catch a new team member, Dusclops. This thing is insanely bulky, even by normal standards, let alone by non-evolved standards, so this could be really useful. We awaken Rayquaza, who sorts out Kyogre and Groudon's beef, and we can finally take on the 8th and final gym leader. One starts with a Gorbis, so I lead with our new Dusclops and start setting up Calm Minds. His attacks really aren't doing that much at all, as I land a powered up Shadow Ball. It does just about half and we're able to survive a Hydro Pump the next turn, and one more Shadow Ball brings it down to a sliver of health. Obviously he does heal up with a Hyper Potion the next turn, but that's fine as Shadow Ball's still doing about half, and because of the Leftovers recovery we can survive one more Hydro Pump. We bring it back down to red again before we go down to an Aqua Tail, so now I can just swap into Pikachu and clear up with a Thunderbolt. Samurott is up next, so I swap into Phantump, and go straight for a Horneach as he sets up a Swords Dance. It also does about 50%, and next turn he just goes for a special move instead of a physical one, so we take the hit no problem, and take it out with one more Hornleech. Next up is Chloritza, so I go into Munchlax and go for a Seed Bomb, as we get hit by an Aura Sphere, which we somehow managed to survive. I hit back with the super effective Seed Bomb, which, to be honest, didn't really do as much as I was expecting it to. We go down to one more Aura Sphere the next turn, so I just swap into Pikachu and go for the Thunderbolt. Unfortunately though, it's not quite enough to KO, but we do get the Paralysis. Not only that, he gets fully paralysed, so one more Thunderbolt is all she wrote. Empoleon's up next, so I decide to stay in and go for the Nuzzle, as he actually misses a Hydro Pump, which is actually really lucky. We would not have survived that. I go for a Thunderbolt the next turn, which does good damage, as he misses a second Hydro Pump. I don't think a Thunderbolt's going to be quite enough to take it out though, so I just go for the powerful Volt Tackle. We do take some recoil, but that's fine. It's enough to take it out, and next up is Kingdra. I swap into Scyther and go for a Swords Dance, as we get hit by an Outrage, but Scyther's just bulky enough to take the hit. I then just go for the Bug Bite, which is an easy one-shot, and we're down to his final Pokemon, Gyarados. He does drop our attack one stage, but we're still +1, and I go for the Aerial Ace, which almost takes it out from full health. He does survive though and go for a Hydro Pump, but we somehow survive the hit, and he just goes for a Hyper Potion, which means we can take it out with 2 more Aerial Aces. Gyarados goes down, and we've now got all 8 badges. We make our way through Victory Road, where I catch one final Pokemon, Gabite. It's basically just a mini Garchomp, so I'm kinda happy to have this on the team. It could really come in useful. Before we can take on the Pokemon League though, we have to fight Wally. He leads off with a level 71 Roserade, so I just start with Cypher and go for one super effective Aerial Ace for a one-hit KO. Next up is Talonflame, so I swap into Onix as he sets up a Swords Dance, and goes straight for a 4-time super effective Rock Slide. It's not actually enough to take it out, and he does go for Roost the next turn, but he just goes for a not very effective Brave Bird, and with the help of the Rocky Helmet, one more Rock Slide is enough to take it out. Next up is Azumarill, so I swap back into Scyther and go for a Swords Dance, as he sets up a Belly Drum. This could be quite the threat. Thankfully though, he doesn't have Aqua Jet or anything, so we can just outspeed and take it out with an Aerial Ace. And next up is Magnezone. I just stay in and go for a Thief as he goes for a Volt Switch, which somehow Scyther actually survives. He swaps into Garchomp though, which is quite terrifying. I go for another Thief, which does over half, as we get taken out by the Rocky Helmet. I send in Gabite and he must have gone for Dragon Tail here, as somehow we're faster. We get a lucky crit as well, but we didn't need it. Now the Magna Zone comes back out, so I swap into Munchlax, who just about takes a Thunderbolt. I retaliate with a 4-time super effective Earthquake, and obviously it's enough to KO and we're down to his final Pokemon Gallade. I swap into Pikachu as I know I want to paralyze this thing. Somewhat unsurprisingly it does Mega Evolve, but we're still faster and paralyze it with a Nuzzle. He hits us with a Leaf Blade, which is just no way we're going to survive, so I swap into Phantom. I knew that Shadow Claw wouldn't be enough, so I went for Horn Leech this time, as he hits back with a Zen Headbutt. Unfortunately we can't survive, but that's not really a problem. I swap into Gabite, who's now faster, and go for the Outrage. It's enough to take it out from that range, and we've beaten Wally. That was a little bit touch and go. Now we've arrived at the Pokemon League, let's have a look at our final team. I love how some of these Pokemon have been with us since the very beginning. Pikachu and Phantom in particular have been really useful. There's a couple of new members as well. Gabite should work well as a sweeper, and we all know how good Scyther is. Dusclops is the bulky Pokemon on the team, and I decided to replace Munchlax with a Celio. I really think that a Water and Ice type could be really useful. Alright, let's see if our team of unevolved Pokemon can beat the Pokemon League. Let's do this. First up is Dark type user Sidney. He starts off with a Weavile, so I lead with Pikachu, and straight away he misses his attack. This means we can paralyze it with a Nuzzle, and outspeed and take it out with one Brick Break thanks to it being 4-times super effective. Next up is Scrafty, so I swap into Scyther and set up a Sword Stance. Spoiler alert, this is going to happen quite a lot from now on. He just goes for an Iron Head, which doesn't really do that much damage at all, and we can take it out with an Aerial Ace from there. Bisharp's up next, but can't take a single Bug Bite, and neither does Tyranitar, as it is super effective after all. Next up is Greninja, and I was sure we weren't going to outspeed, but we do, and Bug Bite brings it all the way down to its Focus Sash. He really should have attacked me here, but no, he just goes for Toxic Spikes, and then the Sandstorm that Tyranitar set up just finishes it off. Outstanding move. His last Pokemon is an Absol, which Mega Evolves. I thought it would just be an easy one-shot, but he has the Sucker Punch. We survive with just 9 health though, and Bug Bite is an easy one-shot from there. It almost feels like I'm cheating by using Scyther in this run. Absol goes down, and that's the first member of the Elite Four dealt with. Next up is Ghost type user Phoebe. She leads off with a Miss Magia, so I start with Scyther, and once again set up a Sword Stance and then take it out in one hit with a Thief. Not only that, we steal her Life Orb as well. This will really come in useful for this fight. Next up is Gengar, but we outspeed that too and one hit KO, and not even Aegislash can survive. It does leave behind this weird glitch though as Chandelure comes out, but it too goes down in one hit. Dusknoir's up next, but not even he can take a super effective Thief. Scyther cannot be stopped. We're already down to our final Pokemon, which is a Sableye. Not only that, but it's a Mega Evolution of course, and I go for the Bug Bite, which almost takes it out from full health. She does go for the knockoff, but Scyther survives. Is there nothing this Pokemon can't do? She does use a full restore, but that's fine. One Aerial Ace brings it back down to low health, and a second finishes it off. That was the most convincing Elite Four win I think I've ever had. Next up is Ice type user Glacia. She leads off with an Aurora, so I decide to use my new Pokemon Celio. Unfortunately though, she has the Freeze Dry, which is super effective. We do take the hit though thanks to our ability, and I'm able to hit a Surf for over half. We don't survive a second Freeze Dry though, so I swap into Pikachu and go for the Brick Break for an easy KO. Next up is Frostlass, so I stay in and go for the Nuzzle, but we get outsped. I thought maybe we could survive an Ice Beam, but he gets a crit anyway, so no. I swap in Dusclops, who takes an Ice Beam like a champ, and hits back with a super effective Shadow Ball. It does well over half, and we take another Ice Beam no problem, even with a critical hit, so we could just take it out with one more Shadow Ball. Next up is Jinx, so I swap into Scyther and go for a Bug Bite, which is super effective and an easy one-shot. Mamoswine is up next, so I swap into Phantom to try and burn it, but we get outsped and KO by a single Ice School Crash. Not my smartest play there. I swap into Gabite, who does outspeed and hit an Iron Head, which is super effective. We do get the flinch as well, so I thought maybe we could land one more, but she has the priority Ice Shard, which we can't survive. I decide it's best just to swap back into Scyther and go for Aerial Ace, which is enough to KO. Next up is Walrein, so I take the opportunity to set up a Sword Stance, as I was expecting a Blizzard, but we just get hit by a Toxic. That's fine by me. I go for the Bug Bite, which I thought would be enough to KO, but he just hangs on with a sliver of health, and roars us out, which I wasn't expecting. We're forced into using Dusclops, so I decide just to go for a Toxic, as I knew she was going to heal up. Dusclops does survive a Surf after that, so I'm able to hit one Shadow Ball as well, but we do go down the next turn, but he's basically done its job. I swap Scyther back in and go for another Sword Stance as we get hit by a Surf, which we're able to survive, and then we can just finish it off with an Aerial Ace the next turn. We're now just down to our final Pokemon Glalie, which, you guessed it, is a Mega Evolution. It's not a problem though, as Aerial Ace is actually enough for a one-shot from full health. Glalie goes down and we've already beaten 3 of the Elite Four. The final member of the Elite Four is Drake, and this guy could have been a problem, but, well, you'll see. I start with Cypher and go straight for a Bug Bite, which is actually a one-shot straight away, so that's basically the best start we could have asked for. And next up is Flygon, so I swap into Gabite. We do get hit by a Toxic, but that's fine as it means we can actually just hit an Outrage, which is actually enough for a one-shot as well. Haxorus comes out next and I was hoping I could outspeed, but we don't and we get taken out by one Dragon Claw. I swap in Celio who has the Blizzard, and we're actually able to survive a Dragon Claw as well. Unfortunately though we missed the Blizzard, but because of our Rocky Helmet he did do some decent damage to himself, not to mention he has a Life Orb as well. I swap in Scyther who can outspeed now and just finish it off with an Aerial Ace, and next up is Kingdra. I decide this is probably the safest time to go for a Swords Dance, and thankfully I was right as we just survive a Draco Meteor. Bug Bite's now enough for a one-hit KO thanks to our Swords Dance, and next up is Dragalge. This thing's slow as anything though, so I just outspeed and go for an Aerial Ace, which is also enough for a one-shot thanks to a critical hit. Last up is Salamence though, and I know this thing's going to Mega Evolve, so I need to get out of there as I know I'm not going to be able to one-shot, but he could come in useful later. I swap into Pikachu and go for the Nuzzle. This is absolutely vital if we want to win this fight, and thankfully after he Mega Evolves we're faster. He does hit us with an Earthquake though, which we obviously can't survive, so now I swap back into Cypher again. Aerial Ace really doesn't do much damage at all, but he does get fully paralysed, so I know I need to set up a Swords Dance. It's risky, but it does pay off. He gets fully paralysed for the second turn in a row. This means we can now hit one more Aerial Ace, and we get a critical hit. That was insanely lucky. I don't know if that crit mattered or not, but I'll take it. Salamence goes down and we've beaten the Elite Four, and all that stands between us and victory now is the champion Wallace. I'd love to say that I didn't use the Scyther Swords Dance strat here, but I'd be lying. He starts off with a Politoed though, so I lead with Phantump, and right off the bat this thing has Drizzle. We get outsped and hit by an Ice Beam, but we manage to survive, and hit back with a Horn Leech which does good damage, and heals us up quite a lot as well. I thought maybe we could survive one more Ice Beam, but unfortunately we can't, so I just swap into Scyther, you know what's coming. I take it out with one Aerial Ace, and next up is a Ludicolo, who's part Grass, so both of my stab moves are super effective. One Bug Bite's all we need to get the KO. Next up is Kingdra, so I swap into Celio, who I thought could take a Draco Meteor, but unfortunately we can't. His special attack is lowered now though, so I swap into Scyther and take the opportunity to set up a Swords Dance. This was definitely the best time to do this as well, as his Draco Meteor really doesn't do that much. Now I just go for a Bug Bite for an easy KO, and next up is Milotic. Even though this thing's a defensive beast, not even that can take a Bug Bite. Gyarados is up next, so I go for the Aerial Ace, and we get a lucky crit as well, not that it really mattered. We're already down to his final Pokemon, which is a Zwigo. As is to be expected, he Mega Evolves, and this thing's kinda terrifying, it's level 81. I go for the Aerial Ace hoping it'll be enough, but unfortunately it only does about half. I was sure we were going to go down to a waterfall here, but no, we somehow survive on 1 health. That is insane luck. Obviously we're faster, so one more Aerial Ace is all we need to get the win. Swampert goes down and we beat Wallace, and beat Pokemon Theta Emerald without evolving any Pokemon. I gotta say, this was one of the most fun runs I've ever done. I was actually surprised at how well some of these unevolved Pokemon did. Special shout out goes to Pikachu and Phantump, who were literally with us from the very beginning. Especially Phantump, I never expected to be so useful. A couple of members that didn't make it to the Pokemon League deserve a special mention as well, namely Munchlax and Onix, who both actually did pretty well. The absolute MVP of the team though was obviously Scyther. This thing was absolutely busted. Literally all I needed was Swords Dance, Bug Bite and Aerial Ace, and it basically had all of these from the start anyway. Overall, I was really happy with this team. Would I recommend you try this challenge? Absolutely. It's a really interesting new way to play, and it threw up some challenges that you wouldn't normally have to think about. I would also definitely recommend that you try this ROM hack out. There's a few glitches here and there, sure, but as far as content goes, I don't think any other ROM hack has as much going for it. Let me know if you want to see another video on this ROM hack, I'd love to play through it again. If you guys enjoyed this video, then please consider leaving a like and comment down below with what challenge I should take on next. If I pick your idea, you'll get a shout out in the next video. By the time this video goes out, I'll probably be a couple of weeks into my new job, so hopefully things have gone as smoothly as I hope they will. I've got some great challenge videos coming in the near future that you won't want to miss, so make sure to subscribe if you're not already. That's basically all I've got for you today, so thank you all so much for watching. Until next time.